What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to I would say another episode, but it's a new start, new episode, new show, Wrestling with Cards Live. And what this is going to be about today, we're going to talk about legends, as you can see, Terry Funk, and we'll call Bray Wyatt a legend, but we're going to talk about how legends kind of tie in with wrestling cards and how I think that wrestling cards and collectibles above like any other sports or collectibles cards, like it's just different the way that wrestling fans view these things. But before we get into that, let's just kind of set the stage for what this show is going to be about. I'm going to try to do one of these a week. They're going to be live just like they are right now. Of course, they'll be available in the archives when I'm done. But the idea for this is just to give a platform to kind of talk about some more, I guess, trending topics, news stuff within wrestling cards of the hobby, and give you guys watching a platform to come in and chat and ask questions live right here on the stream, interact with other people in the chat. Come on the show. Like, this is going to be ECW rules. You never know. Maybe the topics change on the fly. Maybe somebody does a run in. You have no idea what's going to happen on this show. So you're going to want to tune in each and every week. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you never miss any time we're going live. And I've already got a guest scheduled for next week. Like I said, we're going to try to do one of these a week. The time's going to be in the afternoon, and it's going to vary. It's either going to try to do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays like we have been doing on the channel, but you never know. That could change. It's, again, ECW rules. So welcome. If you're in the chat, leave a comment, ask a question, whatever you want to do. But let's get started with AEW Metal Universe. I made fun of Upper Deck putting out AEW products, or lack thereof, for the longest time. And we finally have it. And of course, we've got to talk about it. So I am going to bring this up for you here, and let's talk about it. So we're using Cardboard Connection right now to view this. So let's go over some of the stuff. Obviously, PMG. So here we got a Sting green PMG. Now, just kind of for context here, PMGs have been in the hobby for years. They really exploded in the late 90s with the basketball craze. And the original OG PMGs were numbered to 100, so there's only 100 of them. The first 10 are green, like you're seeing with this Sting card right here, which is a great image, by the way. I really like the design of this. And then the other 90 are all red. So the red and the green PMGs were kind of the OG PMGs. As we got into the other, like, Upper Deck, got the license from Fleer Skybox, whatever you want to refer to it as, and they started putting out different color PMGs. We've seen pink, we've seen purple. The Hogan PMG that I'm a huge fan of and talked about, that's been the only wrestling PMG up to this point until we had this Upper Deck AEW stuff. So green ones are going to be a little bit sought after, again, out of 10, but I love the design, and they're pretty much parallels. A lot of people think they're inserts. I guess in some sets, maybe they're inserts or they're inserted parallels, but they are basically just parallels to PMG. So here you go. And we have a gold. See, that's something new they're doing that I actually like, that we didn't have in the original PMGs. The gold 1 of 1. Everybody likes gold. Everybody likes a 1 of 1. So cool. Purple Spectrum. Now, that's not a PMG. It's a parallel. But what I think is really cool about this is I stated that, I would talk about how I've started collecting that weird. It started with the Hogan, the kind of pink-purple PMG, and how that kind of translated into these other sectors. So the next thing I know, I've got a Jason Isbell pink PMG. And then I've got a Drax or Batista, which would be the only other wrestler up until this point to appear on a PMG. And it's just kind of a cool side thing to collect. It's not really that expensive, and it's fun. I have Michael Scott one too. So again, they're keeping the PMGs the same with both of these. Here's the gold. I think it looks great. Again, basic design, cool images that I've seen thus far. We're only like one day into it here. Bonzo Gonzo inserts. I have no idea where this comes from. I guess this is maybe something that I missed on AEW or I don't know. If you let me know in the chat if you can help me out with what the heck Bonzo Gonzo is. The merch. Okay, so these cards are die cut, and I think this is a really cool idea. We've seen this with sports before, as far as like jerseys go. And come on, we know wrestling merchandise is one of the biggest money makers for wrestling. And I think this is a really cool idea, especially for like super collectors, or I don't know, maybe you want to collect the set. I don't know, but like super collectors, wrestler, player collectors, I think it's cool. This one is just okay. Planet Metal is really cool. It's again a throwback to some of the original stuff we had in Metal Universe. The Jambalayas, I think they look great too. Now, these two, both very popular, but not going to be as popular as PMGs. It's going to be interesting to see where the prices go on that. Big fan of the. I'm not a big fan of the autographs. That just is what it is. But if you like them, you like them. Intimidation Nation, just okay. There's no pictures on here of the retros, but the retros I'm a huge fan of. I just like the design. They've got a little bit more going on in the background, and there are retro PMGs, so it's just another level. Now, we've already seen a ton of errors in the product, and that's really disappointing. Let's go back up here and leave this Sting up here because it's just what an image that is. Sting, 60-some years old. So what do you guys think of All In? Do you guys like it? Do you love it? What do you think? Speaking of Sting, man, him just 60-some years old, still going like he is. It's just crazy. So I think the PMGs are going to be really popular. As Card Pro says in the chat here, I had actually brought this. I have this to bring up. The Penta sold for, was it $340? So I actually have this. Let me add it for you here so you can see. And there you go. So right here, $340. It was set at a $400 buy it now. So Penta, a guy that, most people in AEW know him, but he's not a MJF or, we'll just say a Cody Rhodes, like that level. I know Cody Rhodes maybe isn't in the set, but that level of a PMG selling for $340 already. And it's, again, the green, so it's a little bit more rare than the other one. And so that's kind of setting a precedent. Now, we know that the prices could come down, obviously, a little bit. So it's kind of tough. Like, if you see the wrestler out there that you want and the green PMG pops up and you can afford it, I say go for it. If it's the reds, again, there's 90 of those, so you might hold off on those. But I think the prices on these will all start coming down eventually a little bit. But that's just an example. And to kind of go back on the reds here, let me show you another example of a sold listing here. Jade Cargill, the red. As you can see, it was set up for 75 and then a best offer of 50. So Jade Cargill, once again, not the biggest star, but well-known within AEW and a red. So a little bit cheaper. You can kind of see where the price level on that is going to go. And then it's going to be interesting to see, like, the golds. What do they go for? What do some of these certain specific talents go for? It's just going to be really interesting. And again, we've seen some errors, and we've already seen a lot of backlash of people. Like, they're like, okay, Upper Deck kind of been dropping the ball on the AEW product, and we're going to give it another chance. Metal Universe is coming out. We're going to give it a chance. And then all of a sudden, we're seeing printing errors. We're seeing name errors. They originally, and this is, again, just a difference in the wrestling card collectors not knowing PMGs, but, like, I guess they said that the greens are numbered to 100. Well, yeah, it's just because the first 10 are printed in green and the other ones. Tony says right here, we've already seen 2 huge sales in the past 2 weeks. Yep. And again, if you got questions or comments, leave them in the chat, and happy to answer anything. So what do you guys think of AEW Metal overall? So far, so good, I think, from certain aspects of the product. I think that here with Tony's Ric Flair, Bret Hart, and Batista PS10. Yeah, that again, yeah, those are huge sales, but those are not within the Metal Universe. I'm just strictly talking about Metal Universe here. So moving on to just the kind of what are we going to expect out of the PMGs? I've got a very narrow list of what I'm actually interested in. This is the first AEW product that I'm actually like, okay, I want that one. I want that one. As opposed to, these cards are cool, but maybe they don't fit my PC. So I am going to continue to maybe build out some of the purple parallels. I know it's not pink and kind of mixes with that Hogan, which is kind of a pink or purple. But so I've got 1, 2, 3. I think I've got 4 names that I'm going to actually try to target within these sets and get certain parallels, certain PMGs, maybe do some color match project stuff. So that'll be fun, and I'm excited to see kind of where these prices land, because I know a few of them, they're going to just be ridiculous and I may not get them, and that's okay. But let's get over to the main topic, and that is legends never die. And as Tony brought up, we had Ric Flair, a Bret Hart, and Batista sell, PSA 10 sell for huge. And that just kind of goes to the fact of what I wanted to talk about today with wrestling and cards. And I think that wrestling cards, and you can throw figures or whatever else kind of wrestling memorabilia you want, as opposed to other sports cards, sports segments, whatever. Wrestling seems to have the most longevity from a legend standpoint. And what I mean is, unfortunately, we've seen the passing this past week of Terry Funk and Bray Wyatt, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But when a wrestling star passes, or even if they don't pass, and maybe they're just not in the limelight anymore, it seems like a lot of wrestling fans with the cards want to post these things like a shrine. Like, I remember this. I remember this moment in time. This was my first time that I interacted with this superstar at a live event, and they signed this card for me, or they signed this figure, whatever it is. And I know I run in some sports card circles, and I know sports card people. I listen to the content. So, ZA Champion, hi, we're live. Welcome to the chat. If you got questions, comments, let us know. So when it seems like when a sports athlete or somebody, they pass away or they retire, whatever, you see like, okay, I remember, they did this for the team. Here was their statistics, whatever it is. But with wrestling, it just seems like people can tell stories. They can take these cards and the memorabilia or the figures and tell a story about what that means to them. And I think that's just so much more important for collectibles and the longevity specifically of wrestling cards and collectibles over sports. Again, sports cards, and I'll even throw non-sports in with the wrestling, because people remember the movie, they remember the song, they remember whatever the TV show. With sports, again, it's more about, I feel like, could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat if you've got a different opinion. I feel like with sports, it's more of a transactional mindset. So, okay, this person died, let's try to get it sold for this amount, or the rarity of, that's not selling for this. Or maybe again, they look at the card and they go back to the statistics and, okay, well, Tom Brady did this. Why is he not selling as high as a, Josh Allen or Sam Howell, some of these younger rookie quarterbacks. And you could say the same thing for wrestling, kind of jumping all over the place here. But I just feel like with wrestling, there's so much more longevity for the collection. So let's talk about Terry Funk and Bray Wyatt. Before we get into that, let's jump into the chat here. Highlight some comments here. Low pop wrestling legend cards are a great investment in general. Yes and no. We've seen that go both ways. I think in the long term, yeah, it goes back to what I just said. That there's going to be fans of Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Stone Cold Steve Austin, soon to be Roman Reigns, probably. There's going to be these diehard fans that are going to remember this time forever. So from a collector standpoint, those are going to be great. Like, I fully feel like if I hang on to a Hulk Hogan card, I'm going to have a blast keeping it in my collection until I just need to sell it for some reason. And from an investment standpoint, I actually disagree with this. And that is because we've seen the market just kind of ebb and flow. Like John Cena would be considered a legend, I think, at this point. And I did have a high grade rookie card of his, the 02 Royal Rumble Fleer. And it was like PSA 9. And I sold it for, I think it was just shy of $1,000. But then now you can go out and you can get around that grade for a whole lot lower. So the market's going to change. So I don't know that you can say it's a solid investment from a collector standpoint. Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm talking about here, is that I think wrestling card collectors should feel confident in whatever they're buying because they actually remember the moments and enjoy it. If you're just looking to do this to make money, that's okay too. But I just don't know about the investment side of that anymore. Let's move on. Tony's got another comment here. Hard to buy new PMGs when there's still low pop vintage wrestling available. It depends. I mean, some people, and actually this is a hot take I pulled out yesterday. The Hulk Hogan PMG, I actually think that we'll see some of the upper deck PMGs surpass that from a sales and popularity standpoint. Reason being, Hulk Hogan, people hate the guy for some of the stuff he says. Now, I agree that some of the stuff he's talked about, said, publicly done, whatever, it's not good. It does not shine a good light on him. But I'm a Hulkamaniac forever. I've been a fan of his since I was a kid. That's not going to change based on some things he said or did. Even though I agree with most other people that it's not right. And the thing that I disagree here with is, let's just take a MJF or go back to Sting. Like, there's a lot of people with deep pockets that collect these people, or people that collect AEW in general, or maybe they just collect PMGs, and they're going to go after these things. And I think there's so many people that hate Hulk Hogan, that hate the WWE, they're so pro AEW, that they might open the wallets to try to get some of these PMGs as opposed to looking at that Hulk Hogan one. So, and then now, if you're going to compare PMGs with, say, Wrestling All Stars, again, it's perspective. There are so many people out there that don't care anything about vintage. Now, I like both. I'm not going to sell my Wrestling All Stars cards anytime soon, but at the same time, I also really like these PMGs because they remind me of 90s, but it also represents modern stars. So, if you have an MJF Gold 1 of 1 PMG, and you have an 82 Hogan All-Stars and a high grade, like, those are both great to me and both kind of on the same playing field. It's not a one or an other for me, it's both. But there, again, a lot of people out there don't like vintage or they don't like modern. So they just want one or the other. So there you go. Here's another comment. Again, if you're just tuning in, welcome. Jump in the chat if you want. Subscribe, hit that bell icon. And we are going to talk about Terry Funk and Bray Wyatt, but we're going to get to the stuff in the chat first. Thoughts on Slam Attack rookies? I think they're cool, but the market, not so much. Certain ones, like, people seem to care about. Roman Reigns, Charlotte. Is there a Becky and a Sasha one I want to say? Maybe, I can't remember right offhand. But I think they're cool. But again, the market just, it seems like they want, for the most part, the base cards, like the base rookie cards or rookie autos or whatever is out there. Seems like there's a lot of true Slam Attacks rookies will know. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's another thing that, like, people don't want to seem to go back, even new collectors of modern stars. A lot of them, it seems like they don't want to put in the work to educate themselves with content, with what I'm doing, or Card Foundation, or Wrestling Trading Cards on YouTube. Like, whatever it is, they're not wanting to educate themselves on sets of the past. Seems like they're wanting to just buy whatever's modern. Okay, AEW Metal come out, I got to go buy it right now. I got to jump in that break. The next Prism, the next Panini, okay, we got to do it. Leafs coming out with something. Well, maybe I don't even like the product, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's just a modern thing that came out, instead of, like, really focusing and going in on whatever it is that they want to collect. So I'm going to catch up in the chat here. So the Sasha Slam Attacks, I mentioned. And here's a comment from Tony again. Not a lot of them are considered actual rookies by most collectors, and that's the only downside, which is what I brought up earlier. And here's another comment from Tony. Early 90s and before vintage. Yep. Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. So let's talk a little bit about Terry Funk. So, for the longest time, like, I know Terry Funk's been around forever. And my first memory of really Terry Funk and wrestling is his the Flair feud on WCW was that late 80s, early 90s, that kind of weird WCW period. That's the first thing that I can remember about Terry Funk, and just kind of, it's funny. I actually remember that period. And then I remember, like, his acting. So, like, Roadhouse, wasn't he in Over the Top also? I'm pretty sure. And so that was fun as a kid. I'm like, oh, that guy's Terry Funk. Like, I remember seeing him in WCW, let alone, I didn't know, as a kid, obviously, I didn't know his stuff from the 70s or before that. And we're going to talk about that today, too. Here's another comment from Tony. Anybody going to the Burbank show? Actually, I'm planning on having a guest next week that is going to the Burbank show. We're going to talk about the wrestling aspect of what represents on there. When do you think we see prices raised for legends when they retire or pass? I don't know. I really don't know. I think this has to do more with rarity and scarcity of the actual card and not the name on the card. Because we've seen wrestlers pass away. Like, let's take Terry Funk, for example. We're talking about him. We've seen Terry Funk autos and high-grade stuff that has actually been on the market before that's higher than the stuff you see now after his passing. And the reason being is either it's a super rare card, it's a hard-to-find card in a set, maybe it's low-numbered or autographed, or maybe it's that high grade, and the ones that are coming out now aren't fitting that high grade. So I think that's just my opinion of why some of these legends are not seeing certain spikes after the death or after they win a title or something. Because again, going back to this whole Legends discussion, it's more of a character-driven, character-based memories, stories thing than it is actually, I think, the statistical point or whatever. So, moving on to Terry Funk, when he gets in ECW. Now, I know Eastern Championship Wrestling from the early, I think it was like 93, 94, 93, I think. And I knew he was in there, but I didn't actually start like enjoying that part of his career until, when I was able to start tape trading and doing things like that. So when I all of a sudden start seeing him pop up in 97 in ECW, that is really what did it for me. And I'm going to share the screen right now to kind of talk about some aspects of Terry Funk's 1997 that was just like, I was all in for Terry Funk at this point. So here we are. Terry, this is a famous shot of him doing the windmill spin with a ladder at Barely Legal. And for anybody, I'm sure most people have seen Barely Legal, but if you have not, basically Terry Funk competed in 2 matches. He took Tommy Dreamer's spot in the semi-main event, which was a 3-way dance, which, again, not a lot of these companies were doing it at the time. It was mainly ECW. And he was in this 3-way dance with the Sandman and Dancing Stevie Richards. If anybody remembers that. And seeing him just, he's like in his 50s, which is weird now because like Jericho and Sting, like, time is a weird thing. We see what those guys are doing in AEW, but we look back at Terry Funk and be like, oh, he was old in ECW, which he looked older, but as we're seeing here, he was still competing. So this is a famous shot of him just spinning around, and most people know this highlight by now. So moving on with some other Barely Legal stuff. Let me pull up another famous image of him. Not so much an image, but yes, that moonsault. Like, why is this guy moonsaulting off of a crappy ladder? Sandman secretly holding the ladder there. And he didn't really hit that moonsault, but again, like, I couldn't imagine how hard that is to do at that age with bad knees. It's Terry Funk just going crazy. Just amazing, amazing memory there. And again, when we're talking about, the just memories of wrestling and what they can do for us and what these cards represent. This is what I go back to. So, and then kind of the last image that I think a lot of people remember, and maybe you remember it from Barely Legal, or maybe you remember it from Beyond the Mat. And that's this image right here. When he goes into the crowd, celebrate with the crowd, he wins the title, the ECW champion, Terry Funk, going through the 3-way dance and then through Raven. Like that's also the first time I remember seeing like a double match. Like the stipulations in ECW were just crazy and fun. And that's the first time I remember seeing that. And just seeing him celebrate in the crowd right before, as we find out later, that the generator blew at the show and the power went out. And this image just, man, it makes me excited, taken back to ECW, excited for the memories that Terry Funk gave us. So we had that period, right? And then he would go on just a little bit later. Let me show you another image here that this actually got me banned from wrestling from my parents temporarily. And that is the barbed wire massacre match with Sabu. And I had this on tape and I watched it so much that it wore out. And I remember, if memory serves, they were airing an episode of ECW Hardcore TV, and it was around the time that Flair and Hogan were going to have a match on it. I think it was uncensored with barbed wire around the top of a cage. And I remember Joey Styles, if memory serves, talking about, we don't use rubber tipped barbed wire. We're not a bunch of geriatric people coming out here, which is funny. They use Terry Funk. We're not coming out here and, doing this fake stuff. We use real barbed wire. In fact, check out this match. And they showed this match almost in its entirety on ECW Hardcore TV. I was immediately taping it. And then, like I said, I had that on tape and I watched it forever. So he ends up losing the title to Sabu here, which was, I think this is where Sabu gets his bicep ripped open. Memories on memories on memories. It's just amazing. And then let me pull this other screen up for you. It wasn't too long after that we would see him start appearing in the WWE. And I actually want to use a card. I think I may have lost it here. Sorry for having problems finding this. I don't have the card, but basically we would see him show up in the WWE, and he was basically doing the same gimmick. Like he had the same gear on. It was like they were taking a bunch of ECW guys and just bringing them over. And seeing him, a guy that just wrestled. Well, actually, I think it was Chainsaw Charlie, right? Yeah, Chainsaw Charlie first, and then you would see him come out. I think he tagged with Too Cool Scorpio, and it was just interesting to see. Wow, this guy that I just saw on the ECW pay per view is now in the WWE with the same gimmick, with the same everything, pretty much. So we'll talk about Terry Funk cards in just a minute. Let's go back and check the chat. When do you think wrestling cards, if possible, reach the heights that they were pandemic level from prices? Any way that the worldly economy gets better, facilitating wrestling card collecting. Wrestling cards are as strong as they've ever been. We might not see the prices where they are, so that kind of answers your question. But I think the floor has been set. We're only going up from here. We're getting more and more collectors coming in, and it goes back to what I said earlier. There's people coming into wrestling cards that don't care anything about Wrestling All-Stars. They don't care about 85 tops. They don't care about the rare food issue product that some people care about. They care about Panini Select. They care about Panini Prism. They care about Immaculate. They care about AEW Metal. Like, there's a new crop of collectors coming in that collect different than what a lot of us think they should collect. And I think we need to let them do their thing. Like, the more people that are collecting, the better. And we should all help each other and say, I've actually had questions like, what is a top loader? What is a penny sleeve? Like, help those people. Don't just say, what, are you new to the hobby or something? Well, maybe they are. Lead them in the lane that they want to collect. Don't tell them, you should invest in All-Stars. You should invest in this or buy this or collect this way or do that. Let them do what they want to do. So, from a collecting standpoint, wrestling cards are stronger than ever, and I think they will get to the point. They're not going to get to the levels of football, basketball, baseball, maybe per se, but I think they're going to get high. We're going to get up there with Pokemon. I mean, we've already seen that Rock Prism 1-of-1 cell put us on that pedestal on TMZ, and we were recognized. And now you're starting to see that more in these sports card shows. Like I said, next week I'm hoping to have somebody on, and that's going to be on the floor at the Burbank show. So we're going to maybe hopefully talk about how wrestling cards have taken over, brother, the hobby, and taken over the card shows. More people having wrestling. Going to talk. Oh, here we go. Card Pros, Michinoku Pro 6-man tag at Barely Legal. Forever a classic. Yep. I remember Taco wearing, I think it was more than Taco wearing the BWO t-shirts, and I just thought that was amazing. Barely Legal. So many. Rob Van Dam was put on the card, but wasn't originally supposed to be put on the card. Taz, Sabu, we had that whole thing. It was just a great show overall. Tony, it's a good take. I've seen the market in NFL and NBA go down recently, but at the same time, wrestling card market has boomed. That's what I'm talking about. It's funny, like, some of the cards I've sold out of my eBay store, some of the cards I have listed, which, quick plug, check the show notes for links to my eBay store if you want to check out what I have for sale. But that being said, like, I'll see a Roman Reigns card, a Ric Flair card, Hogan autos. Like, everybody thinks that's you should buy the Hogan autos, brother. That's a great investment. Well, the thing is, they sit in my eBay store at a price that's a fraction of what some of these no-name rookies sell for on sports, basketball and football mainly. Baseball, I guess if you're prospecting with Bowman stuff, that too. Or even in wrestling, going back to what I talked about, some people don't care about Hulk Hogan, brother. So they don't want that auto. They want a Prism Gold of their favorite modern talent, and that's okay. And it's interesting to see that sometimes these Prism Golds, or maybe it's a Topps Chrome Gold Refractor auto or something, I don't know. These things that are higher numbered and there are lesser named than a Hogan will sell for more than a Hogan or a Flair, and that's okay. Like, it just has to be what it is. And price-wise, sure, we could see him continue to go up. I'm not sure. I don't know that I really can comment any more about that. WrestlingTradingCards.com. Tony Vella, welcome. And thanks again, Tony, publicly for all the help that you did with the Worlds Collide podcast. Maybe we do that again on this live stream sometime. I don't know. We'll see. All wrestling cards are pieces of art. Captured moments fans can connect with. It's what makes wrestling cards so special. Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. And I don't have a lot of this stuff. You can see stuff behind me. But I also want to take this into the memorabilia and into wrestling figures and anything else that you collect that is wrestling. that's exactly why I think that wrestling cards have the longevity over some sports cards, because again, it seems like, now I know there are diehard collectors out there, but I'll hear somebody talk about the rookie receiver that's coming in, the rookie quarterback, the new prospect that is 18 years old that just signed with team or drafted or whatever, and we will see them like their cards just sell for astronomical amounts, and it doesn't make any sense. And there are people out there who are just diehard collectors of those. So for those people, it does make sense to spend that money. That's kind of how like people criticize me sometimes for my carrying cross collection. Like, bro, that guy's not going to win the title anytime soon. And I'm like, I don't care. That's who I like. That's who I collect. So the amount of money I spend on it is my business, not yours. It's not investment. It's just what I like to collect. So some of these sports people out there buying this stuff is what that is for them. On the flip side, it seems like a lot of it is transactional mindset. What kind of stats are they going to do so I can flip this card? What kind of, are they the next Tom Brady, the next Michael Jordan? These like preposterous expectations that they're putting on these cards that are probably just never going to live up to the hype. As opposed to with wrestling, each talent, all the way from, Elias, all the way up to Andre the Giant, there is somebody in that spectrum that collects that person. And they have a specific tie-in, a memory. And then once they start buying that and collecting that, or maybe it's an era or a set, all of a sudden that leads into further going down that rabbit hole and becoming a super collector, or collecting more sets and base sets and parallel sets and all of these fun things. So, I just think that that's what wrestling cards from a longevity standpoint have over everything else. Not maybe from a popularity standpoint, maybe not from a monetary standpoint, but from the standpoint of people love these things, people don't want to sell them, and I just think it's fantastic. Wrestling cards rule. Thanks, Tony. Wrestling cards rule. The other Tony replying, pieces of art, absolutely, yep. Carmi, 2005, welcome, absolutely. We are live. We've already been talking about a lot of stuff today, and let's get back to Terry Funk. These aren't my, I would say, favorite Terry Funk cards, but when I think of Terry Funk and kind of two different, like he's had multiple careers. Why did we not get a Roadhouse card? That would have been great. So when I think of Terry Funk, two cards come to mind. Let me take a drink. 1 second. Catch up with the chat. When I think of Terry Funk, two cards come to mind. And it's a representation of kind of two personalities of Terry Funk. And we're going to talk about those right here. Give me 1 second to share. That is, let's see here. Okay, here we are. We've got the 1982 BBM out of the magazine card. And shout out to Tom from Collectawrestlepalooza. This is actually his card. And guys, he's had this on his eBay store for a while. So he did not post this to try to make some money, brother, off of Terry Funk dying, passing away. But when I look at this card, look how goofy he looks. He's just dancing around, and he's got that like 70s haircut there. And this reminds me of like, I guess how goofy and crazy Terry Funk can be in that previous career. Something else I failed to mention, the empty arena match with Jerry Lawler in Memphis. Like, that's a classic. There's so many things you can go back and reference with Terry Funk and like all of these different segments of his career. So from a like image standpoint, and from what I think kind of reminds me of part of his career, I really like this. And if you guys want to, please just go check out Collectawrestlepalooza on YouTube. Tom's a great guy. And here's an opportunity. He's got this in his eBay store if you want to go support him through buying this, and also at the same time owning an awesome Terry Funk card. So let's talk about the other Terry Funk card that takes me back here. And this is a weird one. 1997 BBM Sparkling Fighters. And I think it says sparkling because that whole image like is surrounded by, if you've never seen this card in person, it's like a silver sparkle border type thing. And when I see this card, obviously you see FMW down at the bottom right here. And this takes me back to the first time that I've ever seen a death match. And that was Terry Funk, Cactus Jack in the finals of the IWA Japan King of the Deathmatch tournament. Famous, worldwide famous at this point. And I remember seeing this clip, I believe it was on WWE when they were doing an interview. This was before the whole Dude Love thing and Cactus and the multiple faces of Foley. And I remember seeing these guys with barbed wire and explosions, and I'm like, what is this? I have never seen anything like this in my life. I start digging around. I found out, what, this is the same guy that was fighting Flair in WCW. This is the same guy that was in Roadhouse and Over the Top doing death matches. What's a death match? So I started digging into that. And, one thing led me to another, that led to ECW. And, we were just off to the races. But when I see this, I just think of his time in Japan and death matches. And this look is kind of what he had that carried over into, obviously, he had the ECW run, and then he went to Chainsaw Charlie. That didn't last long. But then when he went back into this kind of look with those striped pants and the bandana, he had that same Funk You shirt, the same look for the rest of his career, pretty much. And that, talking about the longevity of Terry Funk and all these careers he had, we go back to that BBM card I showed you. We had the career of the 60s or 70s. We had the 80s career where he was also dabbling in movies. We had the 90s career when he was just getting crazy with the extreme stuff and death matches and wrestling for indie promotions. Then we moved kind of into the 2000s, and he's wrestling for late 90s, early 2000s, like XPW and 3PW and all of these other indie promotions that you would see him pop up in. And that's what I remember when I see this image. And that just goes back to the, wrestling images on cards kind of representing that longevity of storytelling, memories, again, that Tony had just mentioned. So when that's kind of my go-to Terry Funk card. Not the best, not the most valuable, but like right off the top of my head when I was kind of trying to put some notes together for today's show, I was like, oh yeah, Sparkling Fighters. That card has got to be mentioned. So that's kind of it for Terry Funk, legendary deathmatch guy for most of us. But obviously huge in the 80s. And most people, when you're talking about wrestling all-stars or wrestling cards, they want to go with the all-stars. And I think it's, it's put up on a pedestal. It's a famous card. It's a famous set. But from an image perspective, not my favorite. I like the two that I talked about better from an image perspective today than the all-stars card. That being said, I have an all-stars card, and I used to have the Sparkling Fighters. I may have sold it or traded it. I don't remember. And so the All-Stars is definitely, but mine's signed. Again, I guess that's another different type of thing that I want to keep that in my set. And I think that a lot of times that people just immediately want to pick the card that is the most valuable, that, what should I get? Instead of just doing what I said and find that card that matches that memory. And if you like his time in WWE and you like his time in XPW, WCW, even in the, towards the end of WCW, there is a 2022 WWE Panini certified card with this image in it. And he's like walking out in the crowd with his hand, or walking out at the entranceway with his hands up. It's got that classic look that we saw in ECW, XPW, WCW, and of course WWE. So if you're looking for more of a modern card with Terry Funk that has that image, I would go for that Chronicles certified card and look for the parallel you like. Or if you just want the base card, go for that too. So let's talk about Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt for me was definitely a character over in ring, and that's honestly what I like. Like when we're going back to Terry Funk right now, everything I've mentioned is kind of his character and what his character did for me, reminding me of these memories. Again, whether it's Roadhouse or Over the Top or maybe the feud with Flair. Like if you wanted me to cite you like move by move on what he did in the King of the Deathmatch, I have no idea. I can't remember that. But I remember the imagery and the kind of the time machine, time capsule that he kind of put us in those spots. And that's kind of why I am a big fan of like character storylines over just matches. But that's a topic for another day. So with Bray, he was always more of a character for me, and as with most people, I think his matches were just always, I thought, okay. Like I was always interested to see, like, I remember the Wyatt family versus the Shield. Like that was an interesting match. But from a character perspective, it was always fun to see what he was going to do, what he was going to come up with. And when I first saw him, my initial thought, here, I'm just going to pull it up and then I'll say, and this isn't going to be anything probably new to anybody because most people also probably have this same thought. Lives are going to be in people's hands, or in Bray Wyatt's case, he's got the whole world in his hands. Waylon Mercy, Dangerous Dan Spivey, for those wrestling historians out there who weren't aware, And I guess this was based off of a character in Cape Fear. So when I saw this character, like most people, I'm sure I immediately, associated the two and was like, okay, I see what they're going to do here. This is a more modern version of Waylon Mercy that they could do a lot with and they could get weirder with. And so I was very excited for that. And then all of a sudden he starts doing all kinds of stuff, getting into the Fiend character, Firefly Funhouse. Like that was nuts. And kind of transitioning over into Bray Wyatt cards. There's a lot out there. Topps put out a ton of Bray Wyatt stuff. You can look at the Husky Harris stuff. We talked about the Slam Attacks rookies earlier. That's one of Bray when he was Husky Harris. He has one of his earliest cards in that Slam Attack set. So something you can go pick up if you're interested in that. But kind of when I think of this, when I think of Bray Wyatt, and I think of cards and moments in time and something I remember and what I could associate with, I think of the cinematic match with all the nonsense that he had with John Cena. So when I'm thinking of a Bray Wyatt card, there's one immediately that comes to mind. Very cool card. Topps now, card number card number 25, current run of 107, which is very low. And I mean, just look at this image. Like, you've got the rocking chair, synonymous with Bray. You've got him in his classic. He's got the Fiend dreads, but he's got the classic like Bray attire on, and he's getting ready to give Sister Abigail to John Cena there. And I just remember this was John Cena NWO, and there was just so much nonsense that took place in this match. And I remember thinking, like, this isn't wrestling. What is this? Like, this is characters. This is stories that are nuts. I just absolutely loved it. So when I think of Bray Wyatt, there's some really cool Fiend cards, and there's some really cool like Topps cards. There's the rookie card, which I sold. Like, I had some listed on my eBay store a long time ago. I had bought some slabs in bulk off of somebody, and they were a bunch of like BGS 9 Topps paper rookie cards of Bray when he's sitting in the rocking chair. And I didn't raise the prices on them, but I didn't take them down either. I just left them up. That's business. A lot of people, kind of as a side note, a lot of people were upset that people were trying to sell, Bray Wyatt stuff, and it's capitalism. Like, I don't think it's right necessarily, but people got to make their money. They got to do what they got to do. So on the flip side of that, though, it also gave a lot of collectors the opportunity to maybe finally say, all right, I need to buy that Bray Wyatt card. I need to buy that Terry Funk card because this is what they mean to me. Kind of closing out the show here and wrapping all of this up. That's kind of why this show is titled Legends Never Die. And that's just because that's what I think with wrestling cards. Now, if you want to, you can use the term legend loosely. Again, Otis. Would you say that Otis is a legend? Maybe, maybe not. But for some people, maybe that's their first kind of foray into wrestling, and the first person they saw was Otis. So maybe Otis has that longevity to that person, and they will look at that Otis card or that Otis figure or that Otis ring used memorabilia, ring used gear, like whatever it is that people want to collect. And they look at that and they can take it back to, this is what got me started in wrestling. This is what got me started collecting. This was the first card I pulled out of a pack. This is the first card that my dad gave to me or my mom gave to me, or the first card somebody gave that they traded to me. That's why I think that I say legends, but legends become kind of in the eye of the beholder based on who's collecting them, because the cards themselves are legendary and will go on forever, as opposed to going back to the sports thing. Some people will buy the rookies or buy, the prospects, and they don't turn out. And for some people, it doesn't matter because they love collecting, and that is the person they collect, or it's on the team they collect, right? But on the flip side, there's, so many of these young talents, the players, and, wrestling, we've seen this in wrestling, but just not like anything else. We've seen that some of these other talents of these rookies, they flame out. They get cut from the team. They have the career-ending injury. And the next thing you know, you're seeing a card that was $1,000 in the quarter box. And with wrestling, we're just not seeing that quite as much. Obviously, the prices are different. But we're seeing people who want to collect for the sake of collecting, but for the sake of the memories. And again, tying this up, when wrestlers pass away, the first thing we start seeing is pictures of cards, pictures of figures, and the stories behind why people have them and why they collect them and what they mean to them. Not, hey, here's this card I've got of the autograph of this person that just passed away. I want to sell it. Here it is on my eBay store, blah, blah, blah. No, they're not doing that. They're wanting to just share with the public what that person means to them and the longevity. So that's kind of it for today. Thank you guys for stopping in the chat. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Spread the word. Next, I'm going to try to do one of these a week again. They're going to be live, and come have fun in the chat. If you'd like to come on the show, run-ins are welcome. It's ECW rules here. You never know when topics change, when guests are going to come on. And again, I'm going to try to do these on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We'll see how that goes. We'll be back next week with another video. Until then, again, hit the subscribe button, the bell icon, so you don't miss any more times when I'm going live, because you'll get that notification. Check the links in the show notes for all the other ways you can help show your support for my content. Links to my eBay store, Patreon, links to the Wrestling with Cards podcast, and much more. Spread the word. Let everybody know that's into wrestling how cool wrestling cards are. Keep pushing the agenda with fun aspects of wrestling cards, building that community. And until next time, check out the videos in the archives of this channel. We'll see you.